coordinator and artist behind the Argentia project at the Freshwater Community Centre. I'm a descendant of one of the original families of Argentia, Mr. Jack Power and Marie Barry of Port Royal. The following is a short documentary concerning life in Argentia prior to...
Marie Power of Georgetown Extension Valley, and we'd like to ask her a few questions about her life in Argentia. Good day, Marie. Would you like to tell the viewing audience a little about yourself?
I was born in Port Royal, and we came to my name, Victoria Marie Barry. I lived with my sister, Mrs. Patrick Baker, and her husband worked on the house and boat. So we moved to Argentia, and we lived in a rented house first, and then we bought a new house, just built as we knew. So we had to do it from that time, it was shading paper and paper and paint and all this, and we just had it finished. After we were settled for a long time. We had nice ground, we set vegetables, we had cattle, and then we had sent leaves from it out. So we moved somewhere to a house in Marquis, and it was 8 of us in family.
What was it like living in Argentia?
Oh, it was a beautiful place. For one thing, it's not the fresh air. And people were pretty friendly. And everyone visited one another, you know. And times we had card games. And we made some different houses. And we really enjoyed it.
Must have been long and fast when you had to uproot and move away from it.
It was very, very big one.
Yeah.
And most people were really shocked when they even went in new houses in different places. There were still the older people looking for their homes. You know, it was such a shock, you didn't know, they were all confused.
Where did people move to in the area?
Well, some moved to Freshwater, some moved to Argentia, some moved to Grand Falls, all over the place. The most settled in Freshwater.
What was it like that day now when you came and told you that you had to go?
I remember the day we moved. It was on a Holy Thursday. And on the other part of the family, we were down over to the place we had to go, in Rookies. And my sister and I and a 6-month baby was waiting for them to come for us. And what they came for us was in a dump truck. So when I went up, the truck was filthy. And I said, do you mean we have to go in that? And he said, yes. Well, I said, we're not going in that because we're not animals. So he went there, and Mr. Gillespie came for us in the station wagon. And
how old were you at the time?
Well, probably I was in my 20s then. Because it was,
do you remember that?
Yeah. So, anyway, we went, when we went in the house, after leaving our big house, this house seemed so small, my sister, I saw her cry the first time. And it was difficult in a way.
Something drastic as that.
Really.
And where did the other people, or your friends?
Well, like I said, we went different places. Freshwater, all over. The Sanctuary, Grand Falls. To our home that we left. We didn't even take a light bulb. And then there wasn't a thing in the house. Even the doors were gone. the knobs off the doors, every light and socket, everything in the house was cleaned out. It's just like, oh, I don't know, a morgue or something. It's just boring. Come on.
Miss Power, how were the houses dismantled down there?
So some were burnt and some were blown out. And so an awful mess, you could say. And so it's heartbreaking to see them work so hard, people, and sitting away what they had, good homes and lots of vegetables and cattle and, you know, living a livelihood of their own. And to see everything gone in a flash, you can say.
Yes, it must be really terrible, and, you know, to see your whole, everything that you work for.
Everything you work for all gone.
Yeah. Must have been hard on your family, so.
Yes. Schools and everything, you know, was different because everything was shut down.
So when you came up here now, then you had to start all over in new schools, and, you know.
Oh yes, well first, we went to live in fresh water then after we come from our kids, we had a house in fresh water. So, I don't know there.
Miss Power, do you remember the first arrival of the Americans in our mission?
Well, not really, because I was in St. John's working at the time. But I did leave and come home and help my sister with the babies to pack up and get ready to leave. And from then I stayed on and helped.
And what was it like? I mean, what did she tell you about
Oh,
the Americans coming?
it was very, very disappointing. In fact, our place was the first that they rolled out. And she went out, this man was so cold, you know, and he beat his hands, and and she said, come in, sir, and warm yourself. So she said, where do you come from now? And he said, from Boston, Massachusetts. And she got such a surprise, she thought it was just someone from Harbour Ranch or something. But it was just a shock to her.
That was the first American experience.
The first, yes.
Yeah.
And then that's when they involved up, and that's when they started first.
And how did you and your relatives feel about having to move from Argentina?
Pretty disappointed. After just having, as I told you, our house all built up, and that's the a big one. Nice big home. But we're lucky in a way because people have lived in sheds and all lived together in couples. But we did have a house.
So there wasn't accommodation for everybody that moved up from
No, my dear, so nothing at all, really. And the government was no help. We had very, very little for our big house. So
you never got compensated very good for
very little.
houses.
Only 100 now for a big house we had. I won't say the amount. But on the other side, we live on what you call the Navy side now. The ones on the other side, on the Army side, didn't move until after open Marquis. And they got much more money because they saw how we were treated.
Miss Power, you were saying some of those families that left Argentina, they weren't offered any accommodations or, you know, any place to stay? Or?
No, wherever you could get. There's nothing definite for anyone.
So some of those people actually stayed in sheds?
Yes, and one person in particular, one family, she was sick in bed, and they wanted this house. And they took bed and stove and all and put it out on the wind. That's really happened.
So who was doing this, you know, who was moving on the families out? I mean, who would come in and tell you that you had to leave?
We're supposed to get work from them, I don't know.
Yeah. So they just sent people in there and just asked you to leave?
Yeah, he just...
Well, more like told you that you
Yeah.
had to leave.
Yes.
It's terrible. So I'm sure you had good times as well as, you know, bad times.
We
when you
did.
lived in Argentina. Could you tell me, did you have dances and other
We had dances every now and then. nothing at all to come home 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, just you're half frozen because nobody had snatched them on and just your nylons. And you'd be cold all night. But we did have fun. And when the Americans came, oh boy, did they ever have fun, because they never saw a square dancer before. We used to have square dances, American Aid, quadrille, lancers, and all they did was get out and swing around, you know, and really, really enjoy it. And we just had the music, just the accordion, was the only instrument then. And in Houlihan played the accordion all night for no fee, and sometimes someone else might have one, you know, give them a break. And oh yes, Mr. Phil Riley, and he used to play violin lots of times, and that's how Riley's father gave him fresh water, then Phil. So that's about it.
Miss Pam, is there any funny stories that you remember that you'd like to tell on the front?
I know one that's around the foreign told that this old lady lived between Conhead and Latney. And he said there are times, you know, sit your own basic lonesome, just listen, cabbage and potatoes and stuff like that. But her husband was very sick, so this day he was dying. So Mama came out, she was down there with us to visit. So he said, I'd like now to have a head of cabbage. So she went up in the garden and she picked the best head of cabbage that she had. But by the time she came in, she was dead. So they put out the feed, and she says, come on now, Mom, we'll have it feed. Don't tell nobody until we have to go feed out of it. And so they ate it, and after them they told that he was dead. That's about the funniest I can have.
Tell us a little bit about your life growing up in Argentia.
Well, our life was good in Argentia because we lived down there, and you know, we had everything. My father had a horse, and he sold horses on the shore, and we had cows, and we had sheep, and we had hens. We had everything we wanted to cook with, and we said everything. And my mother was a great woman. She born 300 babies without a mistake. And went 12 nights, 12 days through them, and stayed with them, and got very good money for that.
Big one.
Big one. Yes, that's what she was, my mother.
Yeah.
And the doctor was old, he's in Prudential, and if they had any wounds, he came to my mother, and she doctored him, and he's the doctor also.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, that was my mother.
And she had born how many babies?
300 babies out of mistake.
Without one mistake.
Yeah. And the doctor had a mistake also.
Yeah.
Mary and my brother died. Yeah.
What was it like when you were a little girl?
Oh, very nice. You know, I lived up at Hitler. That's really the common knowledge.
Did your father fish or?
My father was a fisherman, and he's a fisherman now, and he fished for a living for a while, you know, because that's all the boats was there. Every had a boat, and who had a boat, and Donkey had a boat, and these all kinds of stuff.
You had all your own vegetables?
Yes, all kinds of vegetables. We do pumpkin.
Even pumpkin?
Yes, we do pumpkin.
Yeah? Yeah. Very pumpkin. Did you attend school in town? You went to school in Bill?
Oh, yes, I went to school then for a long time. I passed all my grades they didn't just then, you see. There's no memorial then.
No.
So then I went teaching school. I went teaching then. And so I was teaching over on the other side of the bay. Now, the other side of the bay we call it.
Yes.
The other side of the bay at St. Karen's Parish.
Yes.
St. Karen's Parish. All the flying was there then. All the flying. That's where I went teaching. Where I was teaching. And so I stayed there for 5 years teaching school. And after that, then, one night I gave a dance. That's nothing, I gave a dance. So one of the boys said, my husband then was Skipper, he called it.
Oh, yes.
Skipper of boats, you know.
Yes.
And he was out there, and he said, come on, show the night, boys, and this and that, a good time. He said, no way, I'm not going to show her. I'm not going to show her. He said, come on, Dad, come on. And so I went to show her, and he said, if I don't get her, I want no one.
That was your husband?
Yes, my husband. When he saw me, he was in.
Oh.
And
when who was ahead, only Hetty and Gerald Richard O'Reilly. She O'Reilly. Two from home from the States.
They all live in the
He
States.
went to school to me. That happens a lot. So I gave it in. So I like the kids. I like the children like them, so really. I really like them, huh?
Can you remember now when the first news of the Americans coming to Argentia, what it was like there, how the people felt about it?
Argentia. Well, I remember it must be around Easter time, I think.
Yeah.
That we heard that they were coming, they came. And we had to close school.
Yeah.
You remember? Just go home, close school. And I think I came back to Argentia.
Yeah.
But remember, we got paid though, too. We got our kids to play in the school, you know?
Now, my dad was in Argentia then, wasn't he?
And did you reckon on that picture you were looking at?
Yeah.
No, well, now he was in the high school. He's 6 or 7 years old, wasn't I am.
Yeah.
So I didn't know him then.
He lived down at the Shag Pond, didn't he?
Down there near the shade.
Yeah. But he was back in the States now when the Americans came to look at the base.
Yes, he was in New York until then, like Dad.
Well, he was in New York for a while, you know.
And he came back and
Went back a nice while.
Yeah. Well, his two sisters were in New York, weren't they? His two sisters and his brother?
Oh, yeah.
They were
in
nurses.
Argentia.
They were nurses.
See, we got married in 40, you know.
Yes, yeah.
No, the Americans came in 40 or 41.
Yeah.
But I mean, Dad's two sisters trained in the hospitals in New York, in Manhattan, Mount St. Vincent. So Dad went up there, and then he came back and got married.
Oh, he was back a while, Emery.
Was he?
Yes. What did I got know?
Can you remember the hardships that people had, like when they had to move out of their homes and?
Well, you used to have to look for places.
Yeah. It was in the winter time, wasn't it? In the winter time.
It was in the Saturday and Easter, around Easter time, if we got out of school.
Yeah. I guess it started then, right? Yeah.
And what year was that?
You think it was 40, I guess. 41.
The sons of Anne Murphy, or Anne Power. Anne had brothers Thomas Power, Jack Power, Bernard Power, Michael Power. Sisters were Pauline Power, Katie Power, Mary Power, and Monica Power. The Murphys are going to talk a little bit on Argentia and when they used to come visit in the summertime, and we'll take it from here.
I'm Andrew. I used to come every summer for my holidays, and I remember while sending my bike on the train and going to the station and picking up from Matt Murphy, who was the station agent there. And this is how I became pretty familiar with the people of Argentia. I remember I came here to the base when it started for my summer holidays, and I worked with the Navy. And I remember the day that Roosevelt and Churchill and Stalin came to visit the base. And it was quite a sight and quite an event for the people. Also, I worked in the nighttime as a checker, unloading the asphalt for the schooners that used to bring it in for the runways. And it was quite an interesting thing to see the old site remodeled for a base. And I was quite interested in the planes and that took off every morning about 6 o'clock on patrol. These were PBYs. And several other incidents happened there which were really will be remembered as long as I can live. I think this is enough for me, and I'll pass it over now to Brother Abe.
Well, I'll pass it on to my brother Brendan, because Brendan's next to me. You have more memories than I have.
Well, I used to come to Argentia for my holidays during the summertime, and I remember the last time I was here, the construction was very heavy on the base itself, and I remember the runways as they were being built, and there was trenches on each side of the runways, and you know, the whole geography was really changed, because where I lived there with my aunt Pauline Thorne, and she kept a very immaculate and excellent house, and we used to refer to it as the hotel. And when I wrote home, I used to always mention that I stayed at Thorne's Hotel in Argentia. But I remember coming there first, and it was such a quiet, rural situation there. You know, the air was so clean, and the sun was so bright, and you know, it was a lovely area. And it was really something to get Francis out. We used to come by train, of course, and that was a pleasure in itself. That you'd have the day on the train, and your mother knew the conductor, and he'd come down through the train with drinks and stuff, cakes and stuff, and it was really an outing. But anyway, getting back to Argentia, another thing that I remember too was going to this station to get the train going back to St. John's, and you know, there was one car that I remember that used to work in Argentia. That was Mr. I think it was Mike Murray. But anyway, he was more or less operating out of up around Marquise. That's the other part of Argentia. And but we used to we'd have our valises and whatever we had during the summertime. And my cousin, I think it was Jim Power, would have this horse and what he called a dray, and we'd put the luggage and everything on this horse or on the dray, and go off to the station. And you wouldn't believe the speed that he used to get from that horse, and well, it was nothing to him. He was quite used to it. But by the time we got to the station, we were almost sore from getting bounced around. But anyway, we arrived there. And another thing that I remember, too, was at night, you know, we used to walk out to the lighthouse on the shore in Argentina, Foreign's Lighthouse, I think it was called. And, you know, it was just like an outing. Then when we'd come back, I remember on the way out, there was no lighting, no lights then. It was all dark. But there was a lot of sheep in that, and you'd practically trip over the sheep as you were going out to the lighthouse. Then we'd come back, and then we'd go into Uncle Jack Powers, that was my uncle's house, and he had a collection of records. And the records that he had, he had this machine that you wind up like a Victrola. And one of the ones that stays in my mind was this one, Down by the Livy Side. Now, my brother tells me the Livy is a river in Ireland, and this is what it was. Well, that was among the old records that he had. But to us, that was the same as Grand Opera, and it was so enjoyable. I don't think at that time radio was very prevalent. But I remember also Uncle Jack Power. He was the lighthouse keeper on Fox Island. And we made this trip, several of us, with him aboard his motorboat. But to land on Fox Island, when the boat came in, there was a flat rock there. And when the boat came in so far, you had to jump. And if you missed the rock, you were in the salt water. Luckily, none of us ever missed it. But the boat would come up on the waves, and that was it. And but it was really an outing. Now, of course, if Uncle Jack wanted to come in, they had certain signals they used to play on the horn. Two would be that come out and relieve me in the job, see, and another one would be something else. But they knew this, and of course, Fox Island wasn't that far away. But the other one, Red Island, seemed to be just like it was into Argentia, but it was close, but not that. And I remember my mother used to say that there was one family there, one man there was, I think his name was Lamb, and he was a cousin of my mother on the power side. And they used to make the joke in Argentia that Lamb used to come to Argentia to exercise, to walk, because there was no room on Red Island to walk. But the things stay in your mind. Now, I remember my father, he was a member for Placentia West, and he was really, he was born in Placentia Bay, he was born out there, and he had a great understanding of the prevailing winds and all this. For instance, he would never turn a boat against the sun, and if you did, you had to turn the boat back the other way. Now, I heard on the regatta the other day that this man was on. He said the same thing. He said, look, all these boats in the regatta are turning the wrong way. He said they have to follow with the sun, with the same as the cock. And but so I recall then my father, what he was saying about, I thought it was just an old wise tale. But I remember a couple of times I had to turn the boat the other way when I was turning around. He said, no, turn it the other way. That's bad enough, But anyway, he knew an awful lot about Placentia Bay and Argentia. Of course, he married an Argentia girl, so, But when the base was being talked about in that, because he knew so much about Placentia Bay and that the Americans asked him if he'd go up in the plane and point out the best piece of land for a runway or whatever, an airport. So he said, oh, yes, I'll go up. So anyway, he went up, and he was telling us afterwards about it, that he pointed out where the prevailing winds were coming in Placentia Bay and this and the other. And so anyway, when they were finished, they asked him if he could make a report of what he had told them about the prevailing winds and everything else. Now, you see, he looked upon flying as the same as being on a boat, which is the same thing, because the plane has to depend on the wind and everything else. So anyway, he made this report, and but he didn't make, as far as I know, he didn't make a copy of it. Now, I became acquainted with a U.S. national at Pepper, because I worked there for a number of years, and he was, American civilian, highly, very intelligent man. So we were talking about it, and I told him anyway that my father had a report of Argentia, a preliminary report on Argentia. And he said, "Ma," he said, "I'd like to speak to your father." So he got down, so I met my father down at Dave Johnson's, and they talked it over. So he said, "Now, Mr. Murphy, would you let me have a copy of that report? I'd like to bring it back to the States and study it." So my father, not thinking anything, gave him the report. But he asked him afterwards, he used to come into the office different times. He asked him for where's the report, and anyway, the sum of substance was that the report was never returned to him. Now, I think that report is up in Washington. I think it's up in the archives in Washington. But I wouldn't be surprised. But, you know, he must have used it to his advantage, you see. So it was disappointing because it was really one of the original preliminaries on the base in Argentia. So that's as much as I recall, except that I loved being out in Argentia. And I'm something like the people that lived there who used to say, if we could ever come back, we'd come back. And I'm of the same opinion, you know. I have such good memories of Argentia. So I guess that's about for now. So I'll pass it over to my brother Edward.
Well, I'm Ed, and I pretty well have the same recollections as my brothers. But so there's no point in belaboring that issue. After the base was built, and I had gone to work with Exxon, or Esso, as it's called in Canada. And I used to go to the base because we were supplying petroleum products there. And Esso decided to put in an agent.
One thing among others that I recall about Argentia was my grandmother and the brothers, they lived at a place called Pond Head. And up at the Pond Head was a beautiful sandy spot where you could swim. And I remember the sand was so fine and everything that this was our swimming pool. At a later date, my uncle Bernard, he launched his boat there. He had a 20-ton boat. He built it up there. They called it the dock. But in that pond, in what they call Pond Head, it was surrounded by this beach called Lecny, and there was a gut in Lecny where the boats would go in and out, and you'd have to wait for the tide to come in to where you wouldn't run the rocks, you know, in and out. But anyway, on a Sunday afternoon, everything was just idyllic, you know. There was no speedboats or anything in that pond. It was a saltwater pond, saltwater and fresh. And you know, as youngsters, we used to sail boats made from flag roots, which dotted the shore. And we used to race the boats and that was the big thing you'd be doing on a Sunday afternoon. But another point that I wanted to make was that on this Point Latney, the schooner, the original Blue Nose, went ashore. Now, the Blue Nose, this is not the one they have today, but this is the original one. And so my uncle, Bernard Power, who was always interested in boats, and he wanted to know, he couldn't figure out why the Blue Nose was so fast. It won all the races against the American boats, and it was really a racing schooner. So anyway, he went out and he studied the Blue Nose, and he made a kind of a sketch of it in a way, most of it in his mind. He came in and he took an axe and he cut the shape or the model of the Blue Nose out of the wood. And afterwards, Blue Nose went ashore. She was refloated out of Argentia, and he used to say, well, what a pity, such a beautiful boat to be used as a cargo ship, you know. Anyway, at a later date, it went aground down in the East Indies, and it went ashore, and it was lost. But I have the model that he made me of the Blue Nose. I have it at home, and it's the same shape and everything of the Blue Nose, except, you know, it's a scale model. but all more or less from his own mind. And looking at it, you know, you can see how the blue nose or why it was so fast, you know.
What did he find was the secret of that blue nose speed? How was she different from other schooners?
Well, she didn't have anything on the what they call, I don't know what they call it, but on the side, she's just like a knife.
Yeah, I think that was
she had no beam to her.
Yeah, she was very narrow beam.
Very narrow, yeah.
That was what.
And once she got down on what they call the tackle rail, then she was fast.
Yeah.
She did everything.
I think we should finish this interview with my senior brother, Andrew, and we'll again thank people for having us here today.
Yeah, we appreciate this very much to be invited here today and bring back very fond recollections of the days that we spent.
No comment.